Hey, it's Wednesday, so that means you know what time it is. It's time for another episode of the Leadership Toolkit. My name is Mike. I will be your host. This is the definitive podcast for leadership development. It gives you an opportunity to sit with me and amazing guests and learn from what their successes are, what some of their failures are, how to overcome, how to improve yourself, improve your life, and certainly improve your business and the people that are around you. So today is absolutely no different. I'm really excited to bring to you my new friend. I was just sitting here chatting beforehand with Ken Rusk. He's a best-selling author, entrepreneur, blue-collar advocate. He's got a book that was re-released, Blue Collar Cash, and really gets into people and talks about how there's not a degree needed to achieve comfort, peace, and freedom in your life. And so we're going to talk leadership. We're going to talk life. And I'm excited to bring to you today, Mr. Ken Rusk. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Mike, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you spending the time with me this afternoon. If you would just do me a favor and share a little bit with the audience, kind of who you are, what your background is, how you came up, and then we'll get into jamming about leadership and life and some other things.
Well, again, thank you. So I guess you could call me a blue collar entrepreneur. That's what I've been accused of in the past. So what does that mean? Well, it's simple. I started out with doing a bunch of part-time jobs like everybody else when I was 12, 13, 14. And the reason I did is because my father, we had 5 boys in our family. We lived in a very small house. We didn't have any money. So if I wanted something beyond just shelter and food and clothing and basic essentials, I had to go get it. So I learned early on to trade labor for things I wanted, a new bike or an aluminum baseball bat or whatever. So I kind of got that into my psyche early on. And then when I was 15, I said, I want to get my first full-time job. So I want to buy my first used car, take my girlfriend out for pizza, whatever. And my high school shared a fence with an industrial park. And that industrial park had a whole bunch of really energetic businesses, hustling and bustling, people parts, big boy Tonka toys everywhere. That kind of thing. So we used to cut through a hole in that fence to get to the carryout after work. And one day I just stopped in and I said, I knew someone that had worked there. And I said, hey, what do you guys do? And they said, well, we dig ditches. I said, well, Mike, Mike, I told him, I said, I'm wholly qualified to dig ditches. So I signed up for that. Dug ditches in the summertime. In the wintertime, I worked in the office after school because it was convenient. It was right next door. And, the quick story is, between 15 and 18, I got to learn the front and the back of the business pretty well. And when it was time to go to college, they came to me and they said, hey, you can go to school or you can stick with us. We are going to open franchises around the Midwest, and we want you to do that for us. And so, yeah, I lived out of a suitcase, Columbus, Cincinnati, Chicago, Pittsburgh for the next 3 or 4 years. Got tired of that and tired of being on the road and moved to Northwest Ohio, started my own company with 6 people. And we have, I think 200 and some people today. So it's been a hell of a ride, Mike.
That's awesome, man. I love the fact that it's just like we were talking right before we started on stream. I love the fact that it's just you put your head down, you use your hands, and you go to work. And I think there's such value in that. One of the things that you were sharing beforehand is just, how do people start to find themselves? Like for you, you said, hey, at 15, I started doing this and started going after it and just started working hard, and it opened doors for you. What would you recommend for somebody else? Because like I was saying, I have a 17-year-old son and he's trying to find himself right now. It's, do I go to college? Do I start working? And he definitely has some technical skills, but what would you advise somebody that's just starting to get into that workforce and maybe into that role of leading themselves? Where do they start?
Well, first off, you have to recognize that, you and only you know your favorite color, your favorite car, for example, your favorite pet, a dog or a cat, what color, what would you name it? You and only you know what your favorite house would look like, your favorite vacations you might take. You're the only one who knows what sport or hobby that you'd be good at or you enjoy, or what craft you'd like to do, or what spiritual following you'd like to take, or what charity you'd like to be involved in. I mean, you and only you know the answers to those questions. Nobody else does. So why are you letting other people then control potentially your destiny or where you're going, what your future looks like? So let's get that out of the way right off the bat. The second thing I would say is, why are you doing either path? No matter what path you take, college, not college, military, apprenticeship, tech school, work right out of high school, you have to ask yourself why you're doing it. I mean, what's the end game for you? What do you want your life to look like? And then what you do is you simply build a brochure for yourself that is your life. And I coach all the people here in my office to do that very thing. They start out by drawing these things as if they were building a brochure for their very life. Because
Okay.
the more you see something, Mike, the more your brain automatically attracts itself to that thing. It's like when you see a yellow Volkswagen on the highway, and all of a sudden you see yellow Volkswagens everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's called a reticular activating system, or the law of attraction, or these visual electrons that connect inside your brain. And
Sure.
what they do is they create a power that moves your body and your mind in such a way that it goes after those things. So my advice is, start out with a big, beautiful, wonderful, drawn out picture of what you want your life to look like. And once you get that down, then there's many ways to go get that.
I love that, man. So when you're saying start out with a picture, and this leads me to a couple questions. This is why I sit and take notes. I learn so much from the people I have conversations with. I love it. Um, so when you're saying, start what you want with what you want your life to look like, are you talking just in your head? Or are you talking like physically, maybe create a vision board, stuff that you can put in front of you? What's the activity you tell people to engage in?
Well, I'll answer that question with a really cool study that I stumbled across when I was writing Blue Collar Cash. So,
Okay.
Virginia Tech did a study. They took 100 people, put them in a room. They asked
Okay.
them, how many of you have crystal clear goals? Okay. 20 people raised their hand. That's pretty sad right off the bat, but 20 people raised
Sure.
their hand. Okay.
Okay.
So they dismissed the 80. And then of the 20, they said, how many of you have those goals written down somewhere? And they said, 4 people.
Wow.
So of the 4, they took those 4 and they said, now, how many of you have those goals written out in such a way that you can see them, visualize them? Maybe you have them hanging on your wall somewhere in your house. 1 person. Okay. So the thing about the visual side of your brain is it's one of those areas where people say, hey, people think you only use 30% of your brain. Well, vision lives in the other 6 or 70%, okay, 65, 70%, according to how some people work that particular piece.
Sure.
So we don't teach visualization to kids. We don't teach visualization to our high school students coming up through K through 12 and trying to figure out what they can see for themselves. We actually try to herd them into this pathway that has supposedly been tried and true for a lot of years. Well, yeah, I mean, is a college education valuable? Sure. If you have a specific study at a specific school and there's a specific job waiting for you at the other side, then I would say, yeah, go for it. But if you're just going to college because someone's telling you have to, and right now all you're getting out of it is maybe a good dose of beer pong and getting better at that game, there's a lot of better ways to do that, a lot of cheaper ways to do that, and a lot more lucrative ways to do that. So all I'm saying is, let's at least look at what this picture or this brochure or this puzzle, if you will, what that looks like first. Because if I gave you a puzzle, Mike,
Mm-hmm.
1,000-piece puzzle, and I dumped all the pieces on the table, okay, if I walked away with the puzzle box, you're done. I mean, you don't
You have
know
no
what
idea what you're doing.
you have no idea what you're doing. So why are we doing that with life? We're trying to tell kids, here's a bunch of pieces, just start fitting them together, and eventually you might see something. That's completely backwards to the way we should be coaching our kids. And that's how I do it here. The puzzle is the brochure that is your life. Let's put that together, and it can change, it can get better, it can alter. But let's get that basic piece down where you look at it and you go, man, if I could live like that, That would be cool. And then once you do that, I can show you that there's 100 different pathways to getting there.
Sure.
And 50% of the people that are doing that work with their hands, even to this day.
Man, I love that layout. Hey, I'm gonna use this opportunity because I get ahead of myself here. If we sit and chat and so forth, one of the things Ken and I talked about before the show, he's got a great course on his website besides his book. And so if you're watching right now, I'll put it on the screen. You can sign up for Ken's course. I said get Ken's course, but I think you can sign up and connect with Ken at kenrusk.com. That's KENRUSK.com. Especially if somebody's listening later on the audio podcast, make sure and go check that out. And I think probably I have to imagine, I have not taken your course, but I may have to go check it out after this, that I have to imagine that some of that you're talking about is included. And would I be right in that?
Yeah, absolutely. When I wrote the book, I've been on a couple of hundred podcasts in the past year and a half. I think this one is 251 or 252.
Awesome.
And I have to tell you, I've been blessed that way because I've got a good team. And so I'm trying to get this message out there, because if I could save one kid from wasting time, money, and going into debt, that's my goal. And if I can help improve one learning curve to entrepreneurship for the guy coming up behind me or the gal coming up behind me,
Sure.
That's what I want to do. So yeah, if you go take this course, it's literally 8 sessions that it lasts 45 minutes a session, and you're doing the work. It's an online course.
That's awesome.
So there's a lot of tutorials in it. I do a lot of videos in it. There's a little bit of work that you have to do as far as visualization and that kind of thing. But I also kind of help you clear your mind a little bit so that you can get to that creative place, that spontaneous place, so that you can say, wow, I have the time, the peace, I have the quiet that I can go create this puzzle or the box, if you will. And it's very, very important, because otherwise you're just going to let life happen to you. And I hate that. When people tell me they're out of control, or things just keep going wrong, or things keep happening to me, you're right. They keep happening to you, okay?
Sure.
But you should happen to life, okay? You can't wait. You can't go if then. Like, I guess if I go to high school and if I get good grades, and then if I get a scholarship, and if I'm lucky enough to find a school that'll take me, and then if I get a degree, and if that degree somehow makes me get this good high-paying job, well, then I can live my life. That is completely backwards. Let's all start with the then first, and then find, like I've said, one of the many, many ways to get there.
I love that statement. Start with the then first. I don't even know where to go, because I have several questions written down now that I want to ask you. I also want to share just one of the things that you activated in me that I just was thinking of, because my background's automotive industry. And so I got, into sales by accident, like so many people do. You go, oh, whoops, here, anybody can do this. And so I ended up in sales. And I remember I had a really good mentor and a coach share with me, just like what you're saying, Ken, one of the first activities they had me do, they said, well, sit down and write out your plan. Sit down and write out the stuff that you want. And then we did vision boards on it. They made me hang it on my mirror, so I was staring at it every morning. I think I have some iteration of it still in my wallet from 20 years ago.
That's great.
And what's crazy to me is I remember thinking about what is this 5-year goal? What is this 5-year plan? My mentor, the person that was sharing with me, was so much more focused on, look, just worry about the thing. Your brain will figure out a way to get there. He's like, you don't have to know the path. And I'm like a very, if you talk about strategies versus tactics, strategies is like the what, what's the overarching view, the tactics are how do I get there? And I'm such a tactical person. I was like, no, I got to know how do all the Legos fit together. And he's like, dude, don't worry about it. Just write the stuff down and stare at it every day. And the crazy thing, this is years and years ago, one of my first things was that, I wanted to buy my first house. And within a year we were there. And that was like the 5-year plan. Right. And
Yeah.
I'm like, how does this even happen? Like, how does that, and like, I get the goosebumps talking about it because of what you're bringing up. And it makes me remember some of the things I forgot. That's so powerful.
Well, I can tell you, so you all know who Tony Robbins is, right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So he has a son named Jarek, and I interviewed with Jarek, and it was cool because we were talking about, RAS, and we were talking about laws of attraction and all that. And one of the things he said was that he had found research that was recently done
Mm-hmm.
that proves that it's a science. It's not just a hope, a wish, or a dream, right? He
Right.
said, the more you stare at something, the more these little electrons fire back and forth in your brain. And the more you stare at it and the more you like own that thing mentally, the more these electrons or electrodes that fire become one stream of thought that's constant.
Yeah.
And he said, and at that point, your brain actually goes into, I already own this thing mode. And
Mm-hmm.
then what it does is it creates actions, awareness, guidance in your body to then go after that thing and to manifest it, to achieve it. So if that's true, that's one more thing that lives in the 60 or 65, 70% of your brain that we
Sure.
don't use, that we should all be using. Because if you think about how anticipation works and how powerful that is, even for something as silly as a date or a vacation you're planning,
Mm-hmm.
why wouldn't we use that same power throughout our entire life, throughout all the things that we want? And again, I always have to throw this cautionary tale in. It's not about things, materialistic things. It's not. Of all the cars that I have, it's about racing those cars on the weekends with my brother, okay,
Right.
my brother and friends, or the boat, or whatever I've accumulated in my lifetime, the golf trips I've been on. It's all about memories that we create, because I say he who dies with the most cool memories wins. I mean, I really believe that.
Yeah.
So,
I love it, man.
so it's all about, if we can teach kids that they are so much more powerful than they think they are. Okay, you are not sheep, you are not cows, you are not to be herded. You're the damn shepherd. You're the one that's running this show for yourself. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I say, give them that power, give them the space, give them the quiet, and give them the license. It's okay to question where I'm going to go in my future. Okay, I can kick ass and be a $250,000 a year plumber. Okay, I can be
Oh
a
yeah.
carpenter, I can be a welder, I can be a salesman, I could be run my own bakery, I could be my own hairdresser, I could, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a degree connected thing. And what's really funny about that is when I tell some people, especially parents, when I give them this, they want to like fall back in a chair, because if you're going out and blowing $40,000 or $50,000 a year on an education, and I mean with all the costs involved, not just the tuition, everything,
Mm-hmm.
that's 200,000 on the negative side of your asset base. Hopefully you didn't borrow that money. You can go out right now and get $30 an hour in construction. That's 200,000-300,000 a year, or I mean 200,000-300,000 after 4 years on the positive side of your asset base. If you
Yep.
look at that, by the time you're 23, that's a $400,000 swing from negative to positive. And all
Yeah.
I'm saying is, would you at least look at that and consider it before you just follow the herd? Because if we try to put all 167 million people in the United States, which is what's considered full employment, into college, who's going to be around to do all these things that we need done to keep our society moving along? And oh, by the way, we all know where supply is low and demand is high, that's where the money goes. And that's what you're seeing here today with trade work.
Absolutely. I think the trade work thing is power. Again, you give me like so many different points, so many different directions. I try so hard to stay on the path, but my brain's like, oh, look, go over here. So a couple things that you brought up, like trades and plumbing and so forth. I don't know. I have a friend, Roger Wakefield. I'm going to give him a shout out. He's a plumber online on YouTube. Just crossed 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Fantastic human being, and really talks to people about some of what you're saying is, trade work and so forth. And you're exactly right. Like, why, if it's not right for you, why borrow the money? And then you have this huge swing. The other
Well,
thing,
I think the difference is, though, and it's funny about Roger, because I've seen him all over the place.
Mhm.
I actually love Roger. If you're out there, I'd love to talk to you, because I think we'd have a lot in common to talk
yeah,
about.
love
But
to.
I just think that no matter what you choose to do, blue collar, white collar, pink collar, whatever, yellow, whatever collar it is,
Sure.
you first have to start with why. I mean, you first have to start with what's the puzzle on the box going to look like?
Sure.
Because if you don't have that, then again, you run through life and you're like, well, all these things just kind of happen to me. Well, no, you allowed that to happen. You allowed that kind of reckless abandonment. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
saying you're a powerful human being, whether you're 16 or 60. See what it
Absolutely.
is, allow that RAS to work, allow those electrons to work, and then just go get what you want for yourself.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think even before 16 and 60, I think one of the things you brought up, and this may be, against the grain, probably not for you. You and I will be on the same page on this, but I think one of the things that in general, our education system, right? Our education system educates people to try and continue to get educated. They don't train people. We train the imagination out of kids. We train the why out of kids. We as a whole, as a country, because they go, well, like you were saying at the beginning, no, you got to think this way and you got to go this way. You've got an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 16-year-old kid, they are a kid, right? That has this imagination and what we would call visions of grandeur. And it, like you said at the beginning, you and only you know the answers. Well, they know the answers probably from a very young age, and they get that trained right out of them, if you will, educated out of them in some senses.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote an open letter on my website to
Mhm,
parents a while ago. And I said to them, I understand. I'm a parent. I get it.
mhm.
You think that you birthed your child and now you're diapering your child and then you're clothing your child and then you're sheltering your child and you're feeding them and you're protecting them and you're trying to teach them what you know. And for some reason now, you feel like the only way you can call yourself a successful parent is if they have an expensive degree hanging on the wall. That has never been true in the history of our civilization. And yet somehow you kick all the shop classes out of high school,
Oh
replace those
gosh.
rooms with computers. Now everyone's going down the computer path. Not that we didn't need to learn computers, because you use computers in nail
Trained with
guns
us
now.
now.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it was a perfect storm, Mike, because what happened is you eliminated millions of kids from accidentally discovering how cool it was to build a table on a lathe, or weld something, or fix a car, or wire an outlet. You've eliminated those people from discovering that. And then you put these silly things in their hands. I'm holding up a cell phone right now.
Yeah.
That's, playing Minecraft on that thing is not the same as building your own tree fort. I have news for you. You know what I mean? Is getting out there and building your own tree fort is the thing to do, or to rake something, or dig something, or plant something, or maintain something, whatever it might be. And then you have these colleges that I don't care if you call them nonprofits, baloney. When you have $80 billion in your endowment fund, you are no longer a nonprofit. Okay. And a lot of these universities, I'm not going to beat up on them too bad, but they all have billions of dollars laying around for what? They won't give you a straight answer as to what they have that for. So they are coercing parents into saying, if your kid doesn't come through us, he or she's going to be a loser. That
Mhm.
is the biggest lie in the history of lies. Okay. One of the things that they fall back on is, well, it's been proven that if you have a college degree, you make more money than if you don't. Baloney. I looked into that stat. That stat includes all part-time people, all kids that work after school, moms that choose to work 2 days a week because they're with their kids. You throw that out and go just trade to white collar work.
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you right now, we're winning that battle. Okay, not only
Yeah.
in money but in happiness. So it is something that you really have to be careful not to follow the crowd on. But you have to teach your kids to stand up and say, I'm the one that's going to make this decision for myself going forward.
No, I think that's beautifully said. I heard somebody, as you're talking about like the college loans, and I think some people should take this and consider it. And I wish I knew who said the quote. I'm not even going to try and guess at it, but they said, "Look, send a kid right out of high school to go get $100,000 student loan, and send them to try and go get $100,000 business loan, and see which one they get first."
Yeah, right. You're right. That's
And
sad,
it's
but it's true.
well, and that's the thing is, everybody and as we're going in here, so like if somebody, when you're listening, the audience on the other side, I agree with Ken. It's not like I'm just beating up on college. Like you got to know if you have that definitive direction and so forth, and it is something you need a college degree for, fantastic.
Yeah.
But there's so much other opportunity out there, and I just think I man, I so agree with you. Like you just got to open your eyes to what is the full spectrum. We get shown this little slice, right? Versus, hey, there's all of these other things that are so needed. I want to have you expand on something you said earlier. And when you were, and you um, sort of segued to it here just a second ago. One of the things you commented on was waiting on other people to control your destiny, or having other people control your destiny. Can you expand on that? Like, what do you mean by that? Because you sort of alluded to the parents' guidance for their kid controlling their destiny, or can you expand on that statement? Because I think you said early in the show, hey, often we're waiting for other people to control our own destiny when it is you and only you know these things.
Well, yeah. I mean, first off, so you've got kids at a young age seeing their older brothers and sisters just going off to college as like an automatic. So it
Mhm.
starts there. Okay. Then you've got kids that go into like junior high school, and then they get to high school, and all of a sudden there's these words college prep on the walls in their high school.
Sure.
Okay. Now, I have to tell you, in my high school, it was a high school. At some point, someone decided to put the words college prep on the side of the building. Didn't change the high school at all, didn't change the curriculum, didn't change anything. But now all of a sudden it's a college prep school. What's that mean? And who
Interesting.
put and who put the sign on the wall? Okay, perhaps it was some local colleges. I don't know. But the point is, they get indoctrinated this whole time. Okay, in the teachers. I was told that there are high schools around this country that are rewarded for how many kids they push into college.
Really?
That's like ridiculous. I mean, that's malpractice in my opinion. I stood in front of a group of guidance counselors, although you can't call them that anymore. You have to call them school counselors, because if you need a guidance counselor, you're a bad kid, which isn't true.
Interesting.
We all sought out guidance counselors when we were younger to try to help us
Sure.
figure things out. So I gave a speech in front of them. 42 out of the 46 stayed after the speech. And as they were coming up to get their book, they all said, hey, can you do us a favor? Can you keep shouting from the mountaintops? Because we believe what you're saying, but we're not allowed to say it. Our
Oh,
school, our school won't let us tell someone, you are an awesome crafter. You should become a carpenter. Or you are an awesome this baker in home ec. You should maybe think about starting your own bakery. We're not allowed to do that. We have to push them
it's
all through
wild.
college. Okay, whether we think they can make it or not. So then you got the parents who, again, is the college degree for your kid for them or for you? I mean, where's the ego in that? Think about
Sure.
that for a second, okay? Oh, I have 4 kids and they went to here, 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 and here. Who's talking right now? Are you talking or is your ego talking? Okay, so we have to be careful there. And then the colleges are like, they're just flooding you with it's us or Loserville. And that's never been true. So you got to stop listening. We have to be careful that we don't have them listen to all these one road influences, this very skinny sphere, like you just said, this little slice of the
Mhm.
world. Because I'm going to say something now that's going to blow,
Okay.
it's very
Bring it.
controversial. But seriously, ditch digging was number 99 out of a list out of 100 things that I wanted to do. But I turned it into a $100 million company. Okay. So I look at it now and I say to myself, you know, I got everything I wanted out of my life through hard work and trading labor for the things I wanted to get out of the picture, that puzzle that I was telling you about earlier. And I look back at it and I say, I think I think winning is living well. Okay.
Sure.
So if that's true, then you could say sometimes it may not even be so important what you do for a living as it is what you do with what you do for a living, right?
I
And
love that
and
statement.
and sometimes you get people, especially teachers, that go, "Ooh, I'm not sure I could say that," because looking back on it, I was able to control my input, my output. I could control the quality of my output. I could control my day, my schedule, my time. I could control how hard I worked or how easy I could control my financial gain. So in most trades, you can do that. So I
Hmm.
look back at it and I say, who's really right here? I mean, the win should be you living exactly the way you see yourself living, however you get there. And so that's why I say we have to be really careful that we don't say, well, the degree is going to get you happiness. It ain't. It's you figuring out what happiness is and then finding a path to getting there.
I love that closing statement. You have to figure out what happiness is and figure out the path. I have on the screen again here just because I think it'll be really valuable for people listening and trying to. I think that's one of the huge, just an absolutely huge cornerstone of leadership, of people leading themselves, people leading others, people running a business, parenting is clarity, right? You have to be clear on uh, what it is that you want and what direction you're headed. And I think that's been sort of at the center of when you're talking about vision and you and only you know. I know I keep repeating that. I just love that statement that you shared early on. I want to share again on the screen. You should connect with Ken. If you're listening to this, make sure that you check out his website, check out his book, check out the course. It's kenrusk.com. That's KENRUSK.com. So make sure that you, for anybody listening or watching, make sure and check that out. I have gosh, I have a myriad of questions I could ask you, Ken. I'd like to know, shifting gears just a little bit. So let's say that you are somebody that you've decided, okay, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. This is what I want to do, whether it's blue collar work, white collar work, uh, going to start a company, going to work for somebody else. Um, Once you've made that decision, and let's say you're moving into a leadership role, because this is the leadership toolkit. So I'd like a few
Sure.
tangible things on this. So you say, hey, I'm moving into this leadership role, whether it be leading myself or leading others. What are two or three things? What are a couple of actions that you would recommend for somebody to take to help themselves grow into that position early?
This is such a great question, and thank you for asking it. So,
Yeah.
first off, in Blue Collar Cash, I talk about there's about 9 characteristics that every entrepreneur has. Okay.
Okay.
Persistence, resilience, faith, courage, initiative, vision, generosity, all those kinds of things. And I believe that every one of us has those types of characteristics within us.
Sure.
Just merely surviving tells you, like surviving on this planet tells you you have most of those. And I say that everybody has these things. They're just waiting to come out. They need a reason to come out. They need that why. And so going back to drawing your vision board or that poster box, I believe that that's the initial starter button for all of these characteristics to come out. And so, you know, the pathway that you use to get to entrepreneur, because I've heard people say this to me, Mike, oh, you're lucky you're one of those entrepreneur guys. And I'm like, okay, here's a crayon and a piece of paper. Draw entrepreneur for me, would you?
Yeah.
You can't do it. It's a concept, okay? So I always think that the pathway to entrepreneurship a lot of times starts with intrapreneurship. And this is a word that I use all the
Okay.
time that you might even not even be able to find in a dictionary. But I think in many cases, you've got businesses all over this country, and there's 10 of them in Toledo, Ohio. I can show you right now, where you've got a 60, 65, 70-year-old guy or gal that's been running it, and they want to retire, and they have no one to leave these companies to. Okay. They have these companies paying them $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, and they have no one to give these very viable, long-term loyal customer companies. So I think the pathway is a little bit of how I did it, which is become an employee within that company first, learn everything there is to learn, and either buy out the owner or go start your own. Because in every case, you're going to learn what that person did right. You're going to learn what that person did wrong. You're going to learn what that person, how he or she built a culture that was either, conducive to hanging on to people, or it was the type of culture that rooted people out very quickly that you thought, wow, that was a good guy. Why did he leave? So I think in my mind, there are people right now begging for help in their companies. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that? Pick an industry that you think is cool, or whatever. Ditch digging wasn't cool, but it gave me a lot of control, as I said before. But pick something where you could go quickly become an entrepreneur within that company. And what an entrepreneur is someone who still feels like they run their little division within that company like it's their own. They might not have to go out and borrow the money for 40 dump trucks like I had to do, okay, eventually, or, take on the risk of owning a company or whatever. But they just aren't there yet. So they work within these organizations. They work very close to the owner. They learn how to do these things, and then they either take that company on or they go start their own. And I think that is the quickest, easiest, most lucrative path to getting there. And believe me, if you can fog a mirror, if you can look someone in the eye, smile and shake their hand, you are way above the other people that he or she could be choosing to get into their company. So I think that's a really good path. It's a proven successful path, and it's never been more prevalent than now because so few people are willing to take that kind of thing on.
No, I love that. I love the I think that that's really valuable advice. I've seen studies also. I think Grant Cardone in one of his books released, and he put out a study that he said, everybody finds entrepreneurship sexy and cool, right? Oh, I'm going to go start this thing. I want to go do this. The reality is it's hard, and you go from working 40 hours a week to working all the hours a week, right? And when you're bringing up a really good point, like you said, become an employee first. Be a good employee, be a sponge, listen, and have somebody that can mentor you and grow you. And I'm just sort of recapping what you said in my own words. But that entrepreneur, I've heard, 4 out of 5 millionaires work for other people. And so it's okay if you have that ownership, if you put your heart into it. I think that's really, really very good advice. Let me ask you on the flip side of that, Ken, what if I'm somebody that I'm getting into a leadership role, I've started my own company, or say I'm an entrepreneur and I'm working for somebody else, and I want to bring other people along. Like, good leaders always want to bring others with them, right, to the top of the mountain. You can't just be, John Maxwell says, right, if you think you're a leader and you're headed to the top of the mountain, you get up there and no one's with you, you're not a leader, you're a hiker, right? You're all by yourself. And so what are some things that you would say, maybe 2, 3, 4 items that moving into that role you learned that were not successful, that you would say, hey, avoid this, don't do that thing?
Well, I'm glad you asked this question, because no matter what you asked me next, I was going to answer it with this next piece, because there is the other side, the entrepreneur side. So sure. I think the cool thing about being an entrepreneur is, and here comes another one of those zingers where people are going to go, you can't believe you said that.
You can't say that.
As an entrepreneur, your goal should be to make yourself as irrelevant to your company as possible, as quickly as possible. Okay. Now I know there's people out there, oh no, I do this. I work 90 hours a week. I fix this. I change that. I boss this. I yell at that. I motivate this and I build that. Sure. Yeah, fine. That's all cool. But you are one human being. I don't care who you are. Okay. And by the way, working 70 hours a week does not make you a hero. Okay. It doesn't.
Tell me about it.
You can beat your chest all you want, and you and your high blood pressure and your heart disease can have a good time together. Okay. I look at it this way. So if I'm an entrepreneur, my goal should be to surround myself with as many entrepreneurs as possible, as quickly as possible. Why? Because I can't do it all. I literally can't do it all. And I also know that there are other ways. There's a lot of different ways to make a great spaghetti dinner. I know one way. I know people all around me could probably, what about this? What about that? Oh, wow, that makes it better, right? Sure. So why wouldn't you count on the power of that? And I'll tell you the mistake that happens. So at one point about 10 years ago, I took some of the people into my organization. I took them into the conference room. These are the people that I felt were entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. And so I surrounded myself with these guys and gals that had been with me for a while. And I said, okay, here's the thing. Our company is at X amount of revenue right now. And we've been jumping up, but then we hit like a 3-year plateau. And then we jump up again and we hit this plateau. So I'm just going to ask you guys, I'm going to give you each a little piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down how far you think this company can go in the next year or two, revenue wise, if you had anything to say about it. So they all wrote down their numbers, and I wrote my number down. Wouldn't you know that all their numbers were at least $1 million or $2 million higher than mine?
Wow. That's
Right?
wild.
So what does that tell you, Mike? It tells you that you might be your own ceiling because you think you know it all and you think you got it all and you got all the experience and you've been, steering this company for years, but you never asked anybody else about the spaghetti dinner. Okay. You never asked anyone else what their ingredients are or what they would do differently, or is it meatballs or garlic bread or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You just kept doing it yourself. And guess what? You were your own worst enemy right there. So what I said was, well, here's the thing. If we do that number, I'm going to share some of that increased revenue with all of you.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
And here again, I've heard people say, well, Ken, that's expensive. I can't afford that. Baloney. You're sharing money you don't even have yet. Okay.
Right.
You're sharing the increase that you get. Okay. You're used to X and now you're getting X plus Y. You're sharing some of the Y. Who cares? Right. So, man, I got to tell you, Mike, they were like, okay, Ken, thanks for this. Get out of our way and let us go do it.
Right.
I had entrepreneurship on steroids at that point. I mean, they all went to the next level and they're still driving this place. Now we have 3 locations. I had 1 at the time. We're breaking sales records. I mean, it's, I even turned this place into an ESOP recently because I was so thankful for what they've done at every level to
Sure.
take this place to the next level. And I can tell you, if you think you're the driver of your company and you're going to drive it to the end zone, no way, man. Quarterback can't do it by himself. So all I can say is if you get out of the way and you get rid of your ego and you empower these people to do things and then share the benefits with them, they're going to drive your company way further than you can drive it yourself. And you just might be able to go hit golf balls on Thursday afternoon once in a while, or take your kid to the baseball game, or remember what they look like or their birthday because you've been working so much. And now you're this 40-hour-a-week person hovering above your company, looking down, and you're driving the future of the company versus being in the ditch with them. It's a way better way to live, and it's the reason you opened a company to begin with. You don't want it to run you; you want it to run it.
That, again, just amazing advice. 2 really powerful things that I hear you say there, Ken. One, and I like the part where you're saying, "Hey, look, if we hit this number, we'll share it with you." The fact that you'll invest in questioning the employees, that you include them in the conversation. I think when you include people in the conversation, that it automatically grants them ownership over, right? Over the idea, over the activities. I love one of the questions I've asked in the past in business is, and this will throw people off too. And this might be a good one for you. You've probably asked this or something similar if I've gotten to know you a little bit in the last hour. But when you ask your employees, if you're in that situation and you take the time to say, like you're saying, hey, how can we get to the next level? Where can we get in the next year or two? I've looked at people and said, hey, what are we doing here that's dumb that nobody's telling me about?
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
if they, for a moment, people will pause because they're like, okay, it's a setup, right? But then,
Yeah.
if you really have that level of trust with your people, the advantage is there are things that you do that are dumb that just like you said, like you hit that ceiling or you have these blinders on because, well, that was my idea, so it must be a good idea. Well, maybe it's seen its time.
Sure.
Um, the other thing that I really like that you said there is where you're talking about the fact that, okay, well, hey, we'll share this revenue. Well, again, you're sharing the idea, you're sharing the potential income, and the advantage to that. Like one of the things that I'm hearing, and I don't know how to even articulate this right, but if they had stopped with what your number was, you wouldn't have all the extra revenue anyway. Right, you're putting your own constraints on them inadvertently, on them, the people, and them, your company. I think that takes a lot of humility and being willing to bruise your ego to say, hey, this is real life. And then, like you said, look at all of the things that are on the other side of that.
Well, yeah, and there's two things there. So number one, I put this statement out there a lot.
Hmm.
If I'm in front of the group or even in smaller groups, I will say, you know how I feel about it, okay? I can't get what I want for myself, my company, my family, until all of you get what you want first.
Sure.
And it's a fact. I mean, companies are linear creatures. You have
Hmm.
input, you have work or work product or creation, and then at the end you have sales and hopefully revenue and hopefully profits. And you're always at the end of that line. Okay.
Sure.
So why wouldn't you want everyone within your company winning for themselves first and you second? I want to fill my place up with a bunch of selfish people. I don't mean selfish at the detriment of others, but
Sure.
people that are working on themselves. So if you can get people to say, you know what? I think I can create the life I want for myself the way I see it in my puzzle box with and through Ken's company. So I'm going to hang out here. Okay. I can build my life within this organization. I'm going to hang out here. I'm going to be long-term and loyal. And that's it. You have to give it up to the point where you say, I want them to win first for themselves, because if they're all winning individually, I'm going to win every time at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So that's what I think is the big jump. And I think true leaders are the ones that get out of the way. I,
Hmm.
I would I would not want, if you put 200 of all of our people, if you put them all in the parking lot, shoulder to shoulder, I would be horrified if someone walked by and said, "Pick the owner out," and they went, "Oh yeah, it's got to be him." I wouldn't want that. I mean, we're all in this thing together,
It's a
and
really strong statement.
as a collective, if everybody wins, I sure as hell am going to win in the end.
Really, really powerful statement. I love that when you say put them in the parking lot, pick the owner out. I think that would be a good exercise probably for some companies.
Yeah.
Hey, we're coming to, with respect for your time, we're coming to the tail end. We're just past the 45-minute mark. Ken, first off, thank you so much for joining me today on the Leadership Toolkit. It's been a great conversation. I got 2 pages worth of notes and stuff to share later. Really, really valuable. I would remind everybody one more time, you can connect with Ken at kenrusk.com, KENRUSK.com. And you can sign up for his course there. He's got his book advertised there. I imagine they can connect with you for, speaking opportunities and that sort of, coaching and other things that you may offer as well.
Yes, sir.
And so any final thoughts that you'd like to take us out with today?
Well, I would just say this. When I built this course and when I wrote the book, I mean, my life was already very blessed before that. I didn't wake up one day and say, "Hey, I'm going to write a book." I mean, that never happened. It
Mhm.
just kind of morphed into that. And then it morphed into being a bestseller. And I don't know how it happened. Who wants to know what I have to say? I mean, it was one of those things, right? So I did get, though, I got to the point where I said, I need this book to physically change people. I don't want people to read it and go, "Wow, that was a good book," and then move on with their day and never look back. And that happens a lot with books. They call them shelf help books. I heard that the
Yeah.
other day. So I built this course. Again, it's $179, and most courses out there are like 600 to 3,000. No, this is about helping other people. I donate most of the money from those courses to charity anyway, to local. I give them away to military people. I give them away to people that are in inner city people, that to try to help them
Love it.
out. So if you go out and you buy this course and you take it, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping somebody else at the same time. Um, I would hope that that someone says, for dinner and a movie, I'm going to try and change my life, because it will change the way you think immediately, like this afternoon. And I hope people try it, and I hope they give me their feedback, because I'd love to hear how they're changing from it. And again, it's incumbent upon all of us who've had some success, some luck, labor under correct knowledge, and,
I've
and
heard that before.
and to turn around and help people behind us, like you said, tether yourself to someone and take them up the mountain with you. So I hope they try it, and I'd love to hear their feedback on it.
Love that. And again, thank you, Ken, for joining me today. If you would just hang out in the green room, so to speak, for a moment, I will take us out for the afternoon. Thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And that, my friends, is going to bring us to a close for another episode of the Leadership Toolkit. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you again to Ken. What a ton of just wisdom and insight, and you know, actionable actionable items that he gave us today. So, do me a favor. One of the only ways this show grows and this information gets out there, if you know somebody that could use this, share it with them. Throw some thumbs up on the video, throw some thumbs up on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you might be watching today, or if you're listening later on. And then most importantly, take action. If you know somebody that could use this information, maybe use Ken's course. Maybe he said something during the course of this regarding, uh, learning and transforming yourself or waiting on somebody else for your success or not, and take action to share this with somebody else today. I really appreciate you, friends. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Leadership Toolkit. I'll see you next Wednesday afternoon, 12:05 Mountain Time. And until we speak next, stay great. We'll talk soon, everybody.